Hello friends, and welcome back to Vlogmas. Something that I wanted to do this month was to speak off the cuff, unscripted freestyle on a few topics. One of them is sex work, specifically the radical feminist view of the idea of sex work. And to pick that apart a little bit, I just read a book for work on sex trafficking, which myself and most radical feminists would argue is actually what's happening in virtually all sex work situations. But we have this huge movement of liberal feminists and popular media pushing this idea that sex work is work. So I want to pick that phrase apart a little bit. I want to look at, is it actually work? Is it not work? Is it something else? So first of all, let's start with this phrase. Sex work is work. This is something we see coming from very popular sources like AOC saying sex work is work. The ACLU saying sex work is real work. Teen Vogue, which is aimed at 13 to 14-year-olds, saying sex work is real work. These sources want to legitimize and destigmatize and normalize prostitution and pornography. I think that they are succeeding. Pornography especially has become extremely normalized. Girls are growing up seeing things like OnlyFans, thinking that when they turn 18, that's just the normal thing to do. These are girls, of course, who don't have a developed prefrontal cortex. They're not going to get that till their late 20s, and they may not realize whatever they put on the internet now. They're really selling away their dignity present and far into the future, basically in perpetuity. They think that this is normal because people are pushing the idea that this is normal. That's where they're getting it from. I think a lot of kids think that if something was wrong with this, some adults would be stepping in and stopping it. And because they're not, that it must be normal and it must be legitimate. Sex work is a mantra. It has that power of being this sort of pithy advertising slogan. Anytime anyone uses a mantra as an argument or as a counter argument or to shut down a discussion, I think we really need to be aware of that and be super wary of that, because that is a cult-like tactic. We're talking about people who don't have good arguments. So they rely on this phrase, sex work is work, just drilling it into people till they start to believe it. And some people have started to believe that. The language that we use is really important. Calling it sex work gives it that air of legitimacy. Calling it prostitution has a little bit less of a legitimate feeling. Calling it sex trafficking, which is what it is in most cases, really shifts it back to what it is, because there's nobody arguing out there that sex trafficking is something we should normalize and legitimize, but they are arguing that sex work is, when really they're the same thing. Does sex work fit the dictionary definition of work? Let's take a look at it. I would say that yes, it kind of fits that 1B, 1C definition of work on the surface. In non-dictionary, colloquial, everyday use terms, I would say that no, it's not work as we think about work. I would say it's exploitation, not work. I think that's a more accurate word to describe it. The overarching thing that happens is one person is exploiting another, taking away their dignity, taking away their rights, taking away their freedoms. And that is not something that's incorporated in regular work at all. People who are arguing this sex work is work, that we should remove the stigma around prostitution, they're saying the main problem is the stigma, and without it, it would be accepted as any other kind of work. So I would ask, well, if it's like any other kind of work, will we see training institutions that are accredited? Will we see scholarships for those institutions? Will we see upper class people, rich and powerful people, sending their daughters to attend those institutions or to pursue this career. And I'm saying once this is destigmatized, right? When there's no stigma and this is just any other job, will rich and powerful people do it? If it's a job like any other, then if you go on unemployment insurance, will you have to take a sex work job if it's offered to you? Because currently, if you're on unemployment, you have to take any job that's offered to you that's appropriate. So if you're qualified to do this job, would you necessarily have to take it? And if it was a job like any other, would you get OSHA, coming in to regulate work environments? I guess the people who are trying to legitimize it would, have answers to those questions. No, I don't think they do. I think they just have that mantra. One thing that people on the sex work is work side tend to do is create this straw man and say, if you don't agree with this, then you must be villainizing prostituted women. A straw man is an argument that when you're debating somebody, you create this sort of false argument and you tear that down. And no radical feminist is saying that prostituted women are the villain at all. No one is demonizing them. No one is saying that they are bad or they are wrong at all. Nobody is villainizing those people. That's not happening. We are seeing those women for what they are appropriately as victims, as disempowered people. And that's not us taking away their power. That's us seeing the situation for what it is. They are disempowered victims of a horrible system. Consent is impossible when money is changing hands. And de facto, consent is gone. And consent is gone on two levels, because consent in sex means that both people or whoever's involved is enthusiastically participating. That's not really happening ever in these situations. And consent in a workplace situation has to be there too, or else you have slavery. So you need consent on two levels in this case. And basically, I don't think there's consent on either level. One thing that gets in the way of there being consent is there is usually a gross imbalance of power. There is financial coercion. Typically, a woman is extremely poor. That's her only option. She's financially coerced. If there's a pimp involved, usually there's also the threat of violence, or there is actual physical violence. Even with the client or customer, there's the threat of physical violence. In the woman victim, male perpetrator dynamic, men are larger, and women are naturally going to feel that fear that if they don't comply with what's being asked of them, there's the threat of violence. Prostitution has the highest mortality of any job or career. It's the most dangerous job that's most likely to result in serious injury and death. So the threat of violence is there. The financial coercion, desperation is there. So many of these women have had traumatic brain injuries. There was one study that said 61% of prostituted women had head injuries suffered on the job. The overwhelming majority of these women come from a background of trauma and abuse as children and teenagers. Where is the consent? Where is the enthusiastic consent? Where is the consent that makes it not a slavery situation? I'm not seeing it. One thing I want to mention is this post from LSC that I saved a while ago. This idea that we all sell our bodies. We all sell our bodies. Someone else who goes to work in an office sells their body too. And it's just so false. Like, it's like this idea that sort of these leftists, communists, you hear this from mostly males. I feel like it's like a super male perspective, and a really privileged, like weird, gross perspective too, to say that every single job you sell your body. Of course not. There is such a wide difference in like typing all day versus like being penetrated. I mean, this is like the only job where that happens. Are there jobs like combat soldier or coal miner or things like that that are really quite dangerous and take a toll on your body. Yeah, and those jobs can be exploitative too. I would argue that they're still not at the same degree as prostitution, but just because there are other jobs where you use your body and maybe hurt your body in the process of doing the jobs, even thinking about things like poultry plant workers and stuff like that, they're really associated with injury. Man, I still think it's different. I still believe that there's a difference there, and that argument really falls apart. But as you can see, it's kind of a popular argument, I guess. So a couple things to conclude my little thoughts here on this topic. In the course of looking at all this stuff, I came across this video and I wanted to play it. And this is actually the video that inspired me to talk about how men are biologically programmed to rape. And of course, it's not all men, and we've hashed out that whole conversation and everything too. But I guess I'll just play the clip. It kind of speaks for itself.
Today, Detective Geyer is still on a mission with the Seattle Vice Squad. The detective creates an ad for an 18-year-old girl named Angel, adding a critical detail, the mention of a younger friend.
In just minutes, we have an ad that essentially is advertising an underage girl.
That's why if you could kind of figure out what you want as far as that.
We've gotten several phone calls, several texts. Another call. Now they're really coming in.
So as you can see, the demand is just so shocking and overwhelming, right? It made me think of one other thing, which is that prostitution is often called the world's oldest profession, which is kind of like this silly little thing people say about it, right? It's supposed to be funny or something, but really it's not that prostitution is the world's oldest profession. It's that men's abuse of women is the world's oldest pastime. And that was what I was trying to get at with my first two videos of Vlogmas. When we look at why this issue is so pervasive and will seemingly never go away, and there will always be fresh, women victims churned out into the system, it's because that demand is always going to be there. That's because of men, right? And men's nature. That's all you can say about it. And just to conclude this, I want to say that the solution to all of this, of course, is not to legitimize it, not to normalize it, as people who keep repeating sex work as work want to do. The solution is something called the Nordic model, which decriminalizes women who sell their bodies so that they are no longer being prosecuted. Because that's so ridiculous, right? We prosecute the victims. It almost makes me think of in the Middle East how women are punished for being raped rather than the rapists being punished. It's really the same exact thing, and we think that we're so progressive and above that and beyond that. We're not at all, and it's quite disgusting. But anyways, yes, so the Nordic model decriminalizes the sale of a woman's body, but it still criminalizes the purchase. So it puts the justice burden where it should be, on the men and off of the victims. Instead of normalizing prostitution, we need to normalize seeing these women for what they are. They are victims. They are disempowered. It's not radical feminists saying that's taking their power. It is the system itself. If anyone is taking their power, it is people who are trying to normalize prostitution. Those are my thoughts. I've been thinking about this topic for a while, so I would love to hear what you guys have to say as always. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Take care.